Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the Inside Report. My name is Eric Cavanaugh. I will be your moderator for today's web seminar, folks. This is going to be really interesting stuff. Choosing a data catalog, guidance for a critical decision. This is a collaboration of the Bloor Group and Eckerson Group, and specifically also Inside Analysis, our media brand here at the Bloor Group. I'm very proud to bring this new series to you. It is, like I say, a collaboration of old friends, quite frankly. Wayne Eckerson, Dave Wells, myself, Danelle Alexander. Lots of folks are working together. We worked together at TDWI many years ago, and now we're back together again. We've gotten the band back together, and we have our friends from Unify on the line as well. So our speakers today, there's yours truly on the left. Andy Sheldon, VP of Marketing at Unify, is dialed in, as is Russell Christopher from Unify. And, of course, my good buddy Dave Wells is dialing in from an airport at some location on planet Earth. So let's dive right in. Choosing a data catalog, guidance for a critical decision. Folks, I always suggest asking questions. You can do so using the Q&A component of your webcast console or the chat window. And I'll just say two quick words here real quick. I was very surprised 2 years ago at how much traction the concept of a data catalog got. And that kind of goes to prove that just because you've been in the industry a long time doesn't mean your gut instinct is always correct. I didn't think it would be all that popular, and it turned out to be one of the most popular concepts we've promoted in the last 10 years. So what that means is the time has finally come for this concept of a business dictionary, a glossary, a business glossary, but it's really more than that. We're going to learn today about why data catalogs are critical for getting some organization, some governance, some traction in being able to manage what has become a rather unwieldy world of information out there these days. Obviously, we're living in the world of big data, and we've learned a lot of lessons through all the years of data warehousing, and we're now seeing many of those lessons learned manifested both in tools and technologies, but also in the methodologies for working with very large data sets and for helping organizations understand what they have, how it applies to critical business decisions, and how it can help them move their business forward. And so with that, I'm going to give the slides over to Dave Wells. And Dave, take it away.
Thank you very much, Eric. You're absolutely right. The interest in data catalogs today is off the charts, and there are many good reasons for that. That's why we position this thing as choosing the data catalog is a critical decision. The reality is the data cataloging today is a game changer for metadata management. I see it as the gold standard in metadata management today. So a data catalog is both a collection of metadata and a set of capabilities, advanced capabilities for data management and for data governance. Data analytics doesn't work without being able to find the data that you need, understand the data that you need, evaluate and find the right data for your particular analytic use case, and then acquire that data. In a self-service world, all of that needs to happen seamlessly and relatively painlessly and without the demand for a lot of programming and scripting skills. So what we're looking at today is data cataloging as an essential component of modern data management. We're dealing with large volumes of data, and data lakes and big data aren't manageable without metadata, and they're not manageable without curator tools. We live in a world today where curated data is an essential part of data management. So the data catalog then, as the primary curator tool, becomes an essential part of modern data management. As I said, it's sort of a new standard for metadata management. I see it as the gold standard and the best way to manage metadata today. In years past, we talked about metadata, we talked about business metadata and technical metadata. Today, we still manage business metadata and technical metadata, but one of the big game changers in data cataloging is we also have metadata about people. Who uses the data? Who are the frequent users of the data? How do they use the data? Who are the data subject matter experts? Who are the data stewards and the data curators? So we've turned data from being a thing about computers to being a human thing, a thing about people and organizations, and something that moves through organizations and is sort of the information fabric of business today. So the data catalog then has become the fundamental enabler of self-service data analysis. It is the go-to technology for data curators, And we can't do data governance effectively in this world of big data, data lakes, NoSQL, and so on. We can't do data governance effectively without a data catalog. Trying to balance the competing priorities of data governance, control, and protection with the priorities of data analytics and self-service, agility, and autonomy, that's a real balancing act. And it takes something like the data catalog in the middle to make both data governance and data analytics priorities work well together. So data catalogs serve the self-service community, and they serve the self-service analyst well. But they're valuable for so many other roles too. In addition to those line of business self-service data analysts, data scientists rely on the data catalog. Data scientists routinely need to find the best data, the right data for their particular use cases, and be able to make the most of that data. Data engineers, the people in IT who work with data and work to provision data to others, are often challenged with delivering enough data at the right speed and finding the right data to do it. So data engineers have come to rely on data catalogs to find the best fit data, to know what data already exists that may already have been prepared previously so that we're not reinventing the wheel. Data curators, I've already mentioned that the data catalog is a fundamental data curation tool and one that everybody who curates data must have access to and the ability to work with. Data stewards also find data catalogs valuable because data stewards are highly metadata dependent people. And data governance organizations as a whole, because the data catalog is so central to data governance, the entire data governance organization benefits from and finds value in the data catalog. So how does the data catalog help data analysts? At the bottom of this slide, what you'll see is metadata that's contained in the data catalog, a variety of kinds of metadata. Data about where the data comes from, the lineage, the sources and suppliers of data. Metadata about content and meaning of the data, the stuff that's needed for the data analysts and the data consumers to understand the data that they're working with. Data about storage and access, the ability to seamlessly go from searching for data to acquiring that data and beginning to work with it. And as I mentioned previously, data about people, who works with the data, who stewards the data, who curates the data. And data about processing, what sorts of use cases has this data been applied to before? So that metadata provides catalog functions for searching, for documentation, for annotation so we can begin to socialize data and share tips and techniques and user experiences and reviews and ratings and so on. It provides the protocols to provide immediate seamless access to the data, and all of this is necessary to get us to the point where we have the data that is best suited to the purpose of a particular use case. The catalog provides those functions, and that makes data discoverable, described, curated, accessible to data analysts and data scientists. So ultimately, we're reaching the best point in terms of useful data and satisfying those analyst needs that you see across the top of the slide, to find the data, to understand it, to trust it, and to acquire it before they can analyze it. There are a variety of kinds of data cataloging tools in the marketplace today. What we first saw as data catalogs emerge was standalone data catalogs. They catalog data sets. In addition to data sets, they catalog operations, those things that we do to transform and prepare data. They support data search and evaluation, and they provide a seamless user experience in terms of finding and understanding data, but the seamlessness may end there. So as data catalogs began to mature, we saw them converge with data preparation tools, cataloging all of the things that the standalone thing does, and in addition to that, extending the seamlessness to the processes of preparing data in a code-free, easy, non-technical way. These tools required a high level of interoperability with analysis tools to be able to proceed seamlessly from data preparation to data analysis. The other thing we saw was the convergence of cataloging tools with analysis tools, so that you got a seamless experience in terms of finding and analyzing data, but the challenge with only converging catalog and analysis was that data preparation got left out of the seamless experience. So where we've arrived today is the sort of the pinnacle of data cataloging tools is the fully integrated solution. The catalog of data sets and operations in a tool that includes extensive features and functions, not just for data preparation, analysis, and visualization, but it also extends to include governance and security. So it's a seamless user experience throughout the entire analytic life cycle, from framing your problem to exposing your insights and telling your data stories. Interoperability is important in organizations where multiple data prep tools or multiple data analysis tools are used. But when you stay within the entire fully integrated solution, seamless user experience without the need for interoperability. So the fully integrated solution is the ideal in data catalogs and the best answer to providing a totally seamless experience and a good user experience for the data catalog consumer and the data analyst. So the greatest power in a fully integrated solution is when the users feel like from beginning to end, from finding data to consuming data, there were no bumps, no potholes, no rough spots in the road. To get to that experience, we need to carefully choose the tools. This is why I call it a critical decision. So I went through in my research process and in my dialogue with many data catalog providers, and I've identified 20 criteria for tool evaluation, and I grouped those criteria into 4 categories as you see here. Discovery encompasses cataloging, searching, evaluation, and a recommendations engine. Insights encompass access, usage, socialization, and interoperability. Governance, of course, addresses security, but also data lineage, compliance, quality, and other governance concerns and goals. And then the data catalog environment includes the world in which you deploy, the kinds of services that are available in conjunction with the tool itself, pricing, vendor roadmap, and so on. So we'll look quickly through each of these 20 criteria. But before we get into those, I want to point out a 21st and very important factor that intersects with all of these criteria, and that is ease of use. Usability is perhaps the single biggest influence on business user adoption of data catalogs, and we lose the value of the catalog if we collect all the metadata. The curator has their interactions with the catalog, the governance folks have their interactions with the catalog, but those line of business people who are analyzing data choose not to engage with the catalog. We lose 50% or more of the value of the catalog if we don't get adoption, and usability is the #1 driver of adoption. So looking into these criteria then, the discovery criteria. In cataloging data sets, look for the ability of a data catalog to catalog data sets with a lot of automation. Automated discovery, the ability to crawl data lakes, data warehouses, other data sources, and apply algorithms and machine learning to automatically tag these data sets and identify privacy-sensitive data, personally identifying information, security-sensitive data, compliance-sensitive data, and so on. But beyond the automated tagging of that sort, look for tools that can provide some semantic inference, that through the intelligence that's built into the tools, they can recognize the business semantics and begin to categorize and tag in some of the things that help to make the data sets searchable. We want to catalog all types of data sets: relational, NoSQL, document stores, graph databases, geospatial databases. It makes no difference, all types of data sets. And sometimes we may want to extend to catalog reports, dashboards, scorecards, and other kinds of information assets. In addition to cataloging data sets, we want to catalog data operations. those individual transformations that change the data as it moves through a data pipeline. And the reason we want to catalog those
Dave's in an airport.
Interruption. Yes, I'm in an airport. I found the quietest spot I could in the airport, but when they have a PA system, they can interrupt even the quietest spots. So we want to catalog these data operations because we want to make them standard, consistent, and highly reusable. And one of the things we see in data preparation is reinventing the wheel over and over and over again. The same need to perhaps obfuscate personally identifying information being done in many different ways and being done inconsistently, or the need to calculate a particular business metric being done in different ways and inconsistently. So by cataloging data operations, we cross that bridge from reusable to reused and achieve speed, quality, and consistency as a result. So we want to catalog the data transformations, but we also want to catalog the workflow sequences, so multiple operations can be executed in the right sequence, and the whole business of data preparation can be accelerated. We also need in discovery criteria to look at searching. Searching is fundamental to the data catalog. People are seeking the right data to work with, and what we find a great deal of without a data catalog is that line of business analysts working with less than ideal data sets because they don't know what data exists, and their means for finding data is tribal knowledge, conversations with colleagues, or use of a spreadsheet that they have tucked away because it's available and quick, maybe not perfect, but fast. So search is fundamental to effective analytics because finding the right data is the starting place of effective analytics. So we want a great deal of capable search functions, including natural language search, search by business semantics, search by facets, search by keywords, the ability to search without having to express it in technical language. The business analyst should be able to express their search criteria in whatever language is native to them, and the data catalog should be able to go out and find the data based on that search criteria. A smart data catalog will recognize when new terms are introduced and recognize the need to do additional tagging to make those terms automatic and mainstream also. So we want intelligence in the catalog, not just in cataloging data sets, but in learning from the search process. Making recommendations is another valuable function of discovery criteria. So by looking at the history of what data sets have been used for what kinds of use cases, by having machine learning as part of the data catalog to understand who's using data in what ways for what purposes, then when another business user comes along and is searching for data for a specific use case, the recommendations engine can guide them to things that have been used successfully before. And that's a very, very valuable function in terms of optimizing the right data for the right use case. And finally, when an analyst is presented with candidate data sets, they need to evaluate those data sets. They need to be able to make the decision about whether the data set is the right one for their particular use case. And to do that, they need two kinds of capabilities. They need to be able to preview the data set, see samples of the data that's contained in it, and understand the data set from the perspective of the shape of the data and the data profiles. They also need the capability to see the ratings and reviews posted by previous users, just like you see ratings and reviews when you shop on Amazon. Seeing ratings and reviews of data sets can be helpful in making choices about what data set to use. And in addition to user ratings and reviews, curator annotations can be particularly valuable when people have experiences working with data and they can provide tips on how to work effectively with it. And they communicate those tips to the data curator. The curator can annotate and suggest everything from how to work effectively to cautions about perhaps data quality deficiencies, or other cautions in terms of using the data. So 5 very important data discovery criteria. If I shift gears to insight criteria, these are the things that help the data catalog consumer to produce data-driven insights. The first is data access. I can't create any data insights if I can't access the data. And the catalog should allow me to access directly from the catalog, move seamlessly from data discovery to bringing the data onto my workbench and beginning to analyze it. So the catalog needs to know the protocols and the access methods and give me the ability to get that data without having to go to another platform to acquire the data. With data access comes the governance responsibilities, so the catalog needs to be aware of security and privacy sensitive data and the constraints associated with that data and execute the appropriate data protections. Data usage is another insights criteria, knowing, and this is back to the people metadata, who uses which data sets, for what use cases do they use them. The frequency of use, the experience of the user when using them. All of those are very, very important because this is not just a technical endeavor, this is a social endeavor. And we find frequently people who will use the data sets of analysts they respect who have had success in creating insights. And so we elevate the abilities of the entire organization through sharing data usage experience. Another aspect of usage is when this data set was used, which other data sets was it combined with? Which data operations were applied? So where are the affinities between data sets and other data sets? Where are the affinities between data sets and data operations? And this elevates the whole experience in terms of consuming data and analyzing it. As I already mentioned, socialization is a really important aspect of this thing. The analytics process becomes a human process through socialization. So we're interested in capabilities in the catalog that support crowdsourcing of metadata, crowdsourcing of tips and techniques, collaboration among data analysts to share their knowledge and their understanding and their use of data. And the data catalog becomes a tool that helps to create an analytics community. And I think the analytics community is a very important aspect of this. A colleague of mine at Seattle University, Bob Dunaway, he's the director of institutional research and analytics. Bob says intelligence doesn't happen in machines. Intelligence happens between the ears and in the conversations between people. And one of the things this socialization activity can do is drive those conversations between people. The other aspect of socialization is in sharing your experiences, ratings, reviews, and feedback about particular data sets or particular data operations and workflows. That can be exceptionally valuable in helping to build this entire community. And then we need to think about integration and interoperability, the seamless user experience that I mentioned earlier across the entire analytic lifecycle. Working together of data catalog, data preparation, and data analysis tools, and the integration, the working together of data catalog, data preparation, data analysis with your security infrastructure and your data governance controls. Shifting gears again to governance criteria. First and foremost is the metadata catalog. We cannot govern without metadata. You can't govern that which you don't know and understand. And metadata is the data about data that makes governance possible. So we need rich, complete metadata about data sets, about processes, about people, and about how they work with data. We need security features in the data catalog to work with the existing security infrastructure and processes, to be LDAP friendly, Kerberos friendly, whatever infrastructure you have in place to work with that infrastructure. And be sure to look at what levels of access controls the data catalog offers you in terms of securing by record, by role, by field, by value, etc. Data lineage is very, very important. Full traceability from the original source to the ultimate analysis and reporting is an important aspect of using the metadata for governance. It's also an important aspect of working with data and trusting that data. Compliance is a governance concern, so personally identifying information, privacy-sensitive data. Both of those are real governance concerns, and a data catalog that facilitates and even sometimes mandates obfuscation and masking of PII and privacy-sensitive data is particularly valuable. Quality is a governance concern, and in the data quality domain, we want to be able to expose data conflicts and identify data deficiencies, not to say don't use this data set, but to inform the data consumer and to caution them about some of the deficiencies that may exist. So judging data quality is particularly important. Automated profiling of data and exposing of data conflicts is very, very important. And communicating data quality information to those who work with data helps to escalate the entire quality of analytics. Data curation, I've mentioned many times. Curation, the data catalog should support with features to add and remove data sets, because not every data set should be curated and shared. It should include features for the annotation that I talked about, features for manual tagging to supplement the automated tagging that the intelligent catalog provides, and features to create and change metadata. And then there's a question of data valuation. Governance cares about generating value from data. So the data catalog can help to quantify the value of data assets simply by providing information about known use cases, frequency of use, and so on. It's reasonable to assume that more frequently used data sets deliver higher value than those that are rarely used. It's also reasonable to assume that data sets that are used for predictive kinds of analytics provide greater business impact than those that are used for retrospective analytics. It's certainly more valuable to plan for our future than to just study what's been done in the past. So between frequency of use and kind of use cases, we can make some big strides toward understanding data value and letting data governance step up to those hard questions about data valuation. Then there are the environment criteria. These include your deployment options: on-premises, cloud, multi-cloud, and hybrid. Where can I operate the data catalog, and with what other environments can I connect the data catalog? And how well can the data catalog support mobile users and geographically dispersed users? We know for a fact that we're not a society and a workforce that sits at a desk in an office any longer. We've already heard live the example that I'm broadcasting from an airport right now. So we're always on the move and needing to connect with data from no matter where we are. Another criteria is services. Consider beyond the tool itself what sorts of training and consulting are available for the data catalog tool in terms of training for installation, for configuration, and for using. And are there also forums and user groups that are available to help create a community of users around a particular data cataloging technology? Of course, when selecting a tool, you'll want to look at pricing. And what is the pricing model? Is it priced based on number of users, number of data sets, volume of data, or some other criteria? And look at the pricing in terms of initial costs, ongoing costs, and it's always wise to estimate the total cost of ownership over an extended period of time. And finally, I'd say look at the vendor roadmap. This is constantly evolving technology. You'll want to know what the vendor's future plans and timelines are. You'll want to know if they're pursuing more integration and interoperability, if they're pursuing new partnerships with other technology vendors, if they have plans to create new data connectors to get into perhaps particularly difficult to access data sources such as Workday or some of the ERP systems. You'll want to know if they have plans to move to some advanced data governance features, to increase collaboration, to advance socialization features, so on and so forth. So these are innovative vendors to have created data cataloging technology in the first place, to step beyond where they are today and know what they plan as innovations for the future can be some tremendously valuable insights in terms of choosing the data catalog. So to summarize, choose your catalog carefully. Managing data without a data catalog is ill-advised, it's impractical, it's very, very difficult to do. I've said throughout this 30 minutes or so that data catalog is an essential component of modern data management, the gold standard for metadata management, fundamental to self-service data analysis, the go-to technology for data curation, and an imperative for modern data governance. With that in mind, this is not a decision to be taken lightly. It's a very important decision, a truly critical decision for modern data management. With that, I'll thank you for your time and interest, and I will hand off to Andy Sheldon and Russ Christopher of Unify to give you a look at the Unify data catalog and how it measures up to these criteria.
Thanks, Dave. When Dave approached us at the beginning of the year about this research that he was planning, what really attracted us to Dave's research was really how thorough he had been around this topic of catalog, and as Eric said at the top of the hour, it's really becoming an essential part of the modern enterprise as people need to be able to discover what data they have and where it is. And it plays really perfectly into Unify's positioning. From the get-go, we've developed a data platform for business users to be able to find and use the information that's most important to them. And it's really that phrase, find and use. We think this is, it attaches directly to the catalog and discovery piece of our platform and the data prep. So finding it, the discovery piece, using it, the data prep piece. So as people start thinking about, where is your data and what is the data and all of the things that Dave has talked about and the richness of a data catalog, being able to then identify that and actually use the data as part of analysis, as part of an application, as part of data science, as visualization, and so on. So a seamlessly integrated suite then of data catalog and data prep together on one platform is what Unify is, wrapped around the governance and security components that Dave talked about just now, and threaded throughout our product is both collaboration, helping people use and share insights around that data, as Dave talked about, being able to do data quality and improve metadata and so on. And then throughout the product is our AI engine, OneMind, which helps to do things like recommend data sets, show you knowledge graph data, and in the prep phase, recommend joins and data cleansing. It will be much more insightful for you for me to stop talking about slides and hand this over to my colleague, Russ Christopher, so that he can take you through the actual product and show you how we do it. Russ, over to you.
I almost forgot to unmute myself. And here we go. So, hi, everyone. I've got problems. I have a list of problems right on the screen, and also the problem that I forget to unmute myself. What I'm going to do is sort of play the part of two people today. Really going to focus on the data analyst and the challenges that they tend to have when it comes to finding and consuming data. But we'll also take a very brief foray into sort of the system and the admin side of things. We're going to focus on the catalog today. So even though Unify has some really nice features around data prep, you're really not going to see that. Long story short, I'll spend most of my time as Anne. Anne is a data analyst. She's really good with tools like Tableau or Power BI or ClickView. She has profound knowledge on certain subjects. For example, Anne happens to be really good with Salesforce, which is why the current company that she works for hired her in the first place. However, like many of us, she's good at certain things and not so good at other things. And when her founders, when her managers have asked her to get out of that comfort zone and, for example, do something like a customer 360 analytic report, she's very quickly going to have problems. They're asking her now to get out of Salesforce and to look at things in Tableau like revenue from e-commerce channels and brick and mortar, or maybe understanding cost of goods sold from those channels. Perhaps where our customers are and how many there are of them, demographics of the customers like annual income versus age and how that drives behavior, maybe even things around Twitter sentiment and social. Does a high Twitter sentiment score mean more sales? And how do we drive higher Twitter sentiment scores? Well, maybe we need to close customer support cases more quickly. All of these things are intertwined. All of these things are coming from different systems. Maybe even how does weather impact sales and performance? And all of these systems are things that Anne frankly may not know about. So there can be a challenge to get at all of this data, and frankly there can be a little bit of fear. So with that said, as the scared Anne, I'm going to kind of get in here now and show you how Unify, the data catalog portion of Unify, can help solve that problem. So in any case, I am in the tool, and I have sort of a Google-like search, and I am going to start in my place of comfort. I'm going to start searching for Salesforce. Now, as you can see here, Unify is already making some suggestions. Dave mentioned earlier about how important machine learning is and AI is to the whole process of a catalog, and we're seeing that in play and being surfaced in a very indirect way. Unify itself is based off of a very, very deep knowledge graph, and that knowledge graph is already starting to sort of gently nudge me in the right direction. I'm going to ignore that, however, and I'm going to search just for Salesforce. And what I'm going to get back from the tool is essentially a list of things that has to do with Salesforce. Now, those things might be columns in tables, or they might be data sets themselves, or they might be the data about data, metadata, what Dave was talking about earlier. I'll start there. Now, as a Salesforce guru, I'm already feeling a little bit more comfortable because I know that contact table. I used to play with that all the time in previous roles. And I can begin looking at the columns or the attributes in that table to understand what I'm looking at. So I can see a nice description. I can understand who the data stored is. Where did this data begin its life? Even is this field, is this attribute custom, or is it part of the base Salesforce install I get when I give them some money and start a contract with them? I also see imported system-generated metadata. And what I mean by that is that many of the SaaS applications out there, like Marketo or Salesforce, et cetera, they have very, very rich metadata available. So it's actually a crime not to grab that, to crawl it, to index it, and surface it to the users. What you see me doing here is I'm clicking. I'm grabbing fields of interest to me and adding them to sort of a metadata cart. So maybe I want to take this offline with me and build a data dictionary. Dave mentioned that in passing. But I'm probably getting ahead of myself. I want to be comfortable with the data. I want to trust the data. So let's take a look at the actual data sets. And we'll see right away there's that same contact table here. I can see, first of all, it says staging only. So someone has sort of tagged this. And I can also see things like how it's being used, that this is being used on 3 schedules, 3 jobs. It has a certain number of columns. And also someone has taken the time to annotate this. It's saying essentially, hey, please don't use me. I'm actually based on a web service. And as most of you know, web services can be somewhat slow, especially if you're pulling lots and lots of rows out of them. So whoever owns this is suggesting I not touch it. I use a different version of the same thing. That happens to be right here, contact HDFS. So if we look at this, we can see that this particular data set is used much more often. It's used in schedules and jobs and workflows. It also has about half as many columns. So I can pretty much intuit that someone is curating this data source. That's a good thing. In my case, however, if I'm Anne, if I'm this sort of super uber pro, I probably didn't get there by doing things the easy way. So I'm going to look at the raw data instead and actually start there. I'll take that little performance hit, I'll wait for the rows to come back and be automatically sampled by Unify, and then start browsing and sampling and tasting the data. Dave mentioned that in passing. The very first thing that I see is the fact that some of this data is not for me. He mentioned PII, and clearly someone has taken the time to tag some of these fields. In this case, Unify does it automatically and has tagged this as PII. It has also been masked so that I can't even see it. Now, as a data analyst, this is great for me. Someone is helping me protect me from myself. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I actually, in years past, have been a data analyst, and I assume that if you give me permissions on a data set, I have permissions on everything in it. Well, that has not always proven to be the case, right? You get in trouble because you, by mistake, leak sensitive information into your analytics, and then instead of looking at the numbers, when you're in a meeting, you get yelled at because that stuff shouldn't be in there in the first place. I don't have to worry about that anymore as Ann when I'm using Unify. IT is really providing a service for me there. Now, I want to very quickly profile one of these fields, like mail and city. And I can see St. Louis has 4 customers or contacts, Waltham has 3, Richardson has 2, and here I actually have 20 rows out of my 50 that were sampled, which have no cities. Now, if I was looking at an old-fashioned data quality score, having no values here would probably drive down that score. However, since I'm Ann and I know all about Salesforce and I know that sometimes salespeople aren't quite up to date on their record keeping, that's not really a big deal for me. I can very quickly look at the data, understand that, for the lion's share of this data, it looks okay. I have 22 unique cities being displayed. None of them are invalid. The cities themselves are 44% unique. So even though that data looks a little bit funky at first glance, I can immediately, again, taste it and understand. Looks a little off, but tastes great. Right? I can also see all of the columns here. And again, notice how the tool is drawing out and putting front and center the fields that I need to be careful with. Now, the next step might be, again, diving into the metadata, the data about data. And this is so important because we really want to have agreement across the whole organization around what these various fields actually mean. We get that with the metadata. I have descriptions, I have the data stored, a lot of the stuff that you've already seen in the previous screen. And then here is the system-generated metadata that we automatically captured and indexed. Now, for any of these, I can drill into them a little bit more deeply. So, for example, that contact status field, it's the status of this contact, whether it's a qualified, lead, unqualified, whatever. What do those things mean? Well, you really want an integrated data dictionary or business glossary. And here we can see what each one of the potential values for this field is and what it means. And I can also see that people have voted on these things and ranked them in terms of whether they're good or not. We want to understand this right now. We don't want to have discussions about what a qualified versus unqualified lead is during the meeting when I'm presenting the results of my analytical work. If we want to disagree, that's great, but let's disagree now. And Unify makes that quite easy to do in terms of collaboration via conversations. So Dave again mentioned that we want to be able to talk about this stuff. I'll zoom in a little bit, and frankly, this is a little bit of a soap opera, so I won't get into it. But we have a person who would prefer to use the raw data, even though it's bigger, even though it's slower, because it's more up-to-date, real-time, blah, blah, blah. When all is said and done at the end of this conversation, the people who actually use the data on a daily basis are finally saying, look, just trust me, right? I know this data. I work with it all the time. Just trust me. As Ann, someone who's sort of new to this data set, that sort of guidance is priceless, right? It's a human being who's coming in and saying, this is good, rather than a data quality score that's, 91.2% versus 96%, and I frankly have no idea what that means, right? So Anne is probably feeling pretty good now. She can also come in as an FYI and actually start taking part in that conversation. Maybe she's looking at this field right now and saying, hey, this field is great. Now, I frankly don't know why this field is great, but maybe she just loves the word contact. I don't know. It's unimportant. But when someone comes in the next time, they can click right on that thing. They go right to where the conversation is. They focus on the data, and they move on. So that's conversations. Other things that Dave mentioned, the ability to recommend things that are going on and show relationships. Well, this particular data set is related to 3 jobs, functions, filters, and also additional data sets. These are direct or indirect relationships that are being suggested by Unify. Now, clearly, some of these are going to come out of Salesforce, right? That's no surprise. Here's one that comes out of a SaaS, Unified Salesforce data source. However, others are reference data. This is coming out of a completely different place, individual income statistics, or weather. This is coming out of a third data source, et cetera, et cetera. Any of these, much like a good data discovery tool, I can just sort of click on and begin to drill into and again taste and explore. So I clicked on one. I'm now looking at the opportunities associated with my contacts. I can see all of the amounts of the deals, maybe the probability that they're going to close. I again can see some things are being sort of kept from me. And I now have fairly high confidence in this data. So what I'm going to do now, I've frankly sort of been showing off. I tend to like to put my hands on the data. I like it to be sort of a visceral experience. But for some people, I just want to know the answer, right? Is it even worth me bringing this data into a tool like Tableau to do further analysis on? Is it clean? Well, I've sort of answered that, but there may be some questions of Anne that I can ask that immediately answer a question without me having to do any additional work. David mentioned NLP. The knowledge graph of Unify drives a really nice NLP and natural language query functionality. So I could type something like, what is the max of amounts? Now, amount was the field we were just looking at a second ago, and I can already see, interesting, there are 2 amounts. I'll just click on one at random. And the answer to my question, the biggest sale that we have is $2 million, right? I can also see where all of those amount columns are coming from, right? They're coming from multiple tables, multiple data sets that have been crawled by Unify. So I can tell which is which. I can make sure that I'm looking at the right one that has a high rating. I can look at the description, et cetera, et cetera. The provenance of this data is always known. What we're looking at here, by the way, is a very direct expression of the Unify knowledge graph. Here's the amount column, the amount field that we're looking at, and someone doing data prep at some point in time, even though I'm not going to really show you the data prep, has added filters and functions, sort of calculated expressions to this data set. So someone added, as an example, a field partner influence, or a filter rather. And the lead source must be equal to partner, and the amount has to be greater than $0. This sort of looks like a where clause to me, frankly, that I might see in SQL. Someone added a calculated field called small transaction. And what small transaction does, it simply says, okay, if the sale is less than $10,000, then it's a small transaction. So essentially everything that users have been doing on the system is reused and made available to other people, security permitting, of course. I can also do some advanced profiling, a little bit more information about the data. If I really want to swing for the fences, I might say, what are all of the statistics on a specific data set? In other words, I want a high-level view of every single number in a data set. And again, this is just for me to understand, is this data clean, is it interesting, et cetera, et cetera. So I see things like how big is the column? What's the minimum? How unique is it? What are the number of distinct values there? What's the count? What's the median? Lots and lots of stuff. What's the max? You know, the maximum fiscal year on my opportunities is 2019. That might be a bad thing, right? If I already have sales opportunities out 6 or 9 months from now. So that's another way that we can use the catalog to answer questions quickly and to make sure the data is worthwhile to do additional analysis on. The final thing that I'm going to show you here is sort of an old school way to get at things. Now, I might just want to look at all of my data sets and just rely on things like filtering and tagging. So I could find here that my data C360 tag, that probably has to do with customer 360. So I'll just click on that, and I can see all of the data sets that, again, might be useful to me as identified by human beings at some point or by these tags. I can see I have data sitting out in AWS S3. These are old point-of-sale sales transactions. I have my e-commerce data sitting elsewhere. I have my ServiceNow support cases, weather reports, daily reports from lots of different cities sitting in a JSON file. And then I have my Twitter information. It looks like it's in a database. The interesting thing here is that I don't have access to this. And when this used to happen to me, you know, it was the beginning of this long, wonderful, fun process of trying to find who owns this data set and what do I got to do to get access to this? Do I need to send them a case of wine? Do I need to take their kids to soccer? Whatever it is, I'll do it. In Unify, it becomes much, much more simple. I can simply say, you know, I want access to this. Can I please have it, right? So at this point, I've sent that request out to the ether, and the owner of this data set can respond. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to shift gears slightly. I'm going to log in as the owner of Twitter, and I'm going to show you what that experience is like, and then I'm going to continue to sort of wear the hat of an IT person. So let's do that quickly. And I'm in as an admin who happens to also own that Twitter data set. And we can see I have some activities and some requests. The request is, hey, a minute ago, Anne asked for that customer tweets data set. Is that okay to allow her to use it? And I'll just go ahead and say, yeah, I met Anne in the cafeteria the other day. She seemed like good people. No problem. I'm just going to give her permissions on that. Now, if we were to talk about data prep, I would go right back in as Anne. I'd have access to all of my data sets, and I could start building out data prep, where Unify is literally suggesting how things should be joined, how to enrich that data set with additional filters and functions, and really kind of decorate it with fun stuff. But we are not going to do that today. Instead, I'm going to finish off as an administrator, and we're going to talk a little bit about how I watch what my users are doing, how I help them, how I audit the system to keep risk in check in the organization. So again, everything a user does in this process is actually recorded. For example, if I created a data prep job and executed it, I can come in, I can see that it executed successfully. In fact, I can actually check out the data lineage itself. Dave mentioned this. I can see that the job here contains a number of different fields. If I click on one, I can see it came out of a weather data set, and it actually looks like it was based on a function of some sort, as is this foul weather data field. It's based on 2 fields that were somehow leveraged in a function. Or the mailing city, we looked at that earlier. That came out of the contact table. I can also grab this data and actually use it in a tool like Tableau. I can download a Tableau data extract, a TWBX, or maybe I just want to see a CSV file. I said we weren't going to talk about data prep though, so I need to get kind of back on point. what I'm really getting at is since we're recording all of this information and how people look at it, it's very easy to surface. Since I happen to be pretty good with Tableau, I actually decided to point Tableau at Unify for fun. And I built some dashboards in Tableau, and I embedded them directly in Unify itself. So let me show you. This is actually a real-time view of what's going on in Unify. I can see my most accessed data sets, most executed data prep jobs. I can see users logging in and out, and I can see how long they stayed in the system. I can see people logging in and out again and whether they had failures. If I'm interested in what someone did, yesterday, well, what did people do yesterday? Every access to any of my data sets is shown here. I can see that someone accessed the output of a data prep job or literally downloaded something from the system. So in terms of auditing and understanding what people are doing, it's very, very powerful. I can even audit search. This is critical for a number of different reasons. I might want to understand if people are searching for things they shouldn't be looking for, like employee salaries or, what are the plans for the Death Star. But I can also see what people are looking for that doesn't exist on my system. For example, I have people searching for crime and crime data. These might be data sets that I choose to provision on my system as general reference data, just like I had that weather information or the income information, because it doesn't already exist. I can take a look at who is touching things on the system and modifying those things. Who broke something, right? Because that then downstream broke 5 other reports, and I want to find a head to take. Or finally, where is my PII? What columns have been tagged as PII? Who has access to them? In this case here, all of my users and all of my data sets. Here is the PII across the various data sets that we're dealing with. Or maybe I just want to look only at the PII and really kind of focus on that. So in just a couple clicks, I can actually get in and get really, really deep. At that point, I'm done. I think what you've seen at this point is the ability to come in, either as a user, create really useful data prep and understand where that data is from, get to a point where it's immediately available and usable, and I can open it up in a tool like Tableau and start getting good results quickly. And as an administrator, I understand what's going on in the system. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Andy and stop sharing. So thanks.
Thanks, Russ.
Okay,
actually, over to you, Eric.
Yeah, we have just a minute left here, but I want to just chime in real quick and get a quick comment from Dave and from Andy, I suppose. What we just saw here is really fascinating, and I think the reason why data catalogs are becoming so prominent now in the whole information landscape is because they really do help weave together so many different components and so many data management processes. And if you think about it, we're really at the perfect storm right now, especially with cloud computing, because as we heard during this presentation here, a lot of the cloud platforms like Marketo, for example, and HubSpot and all these other folks, they bake in so much useful metadata that a tool like Unify can capture dynamically and then use to do all sorts of interesting discovery. And you also have not just governance, but discovery and lineage, and you're empowering analysis with clean data. And finally, last comment here, Dave, well, I'll throw it to you if you're still out there. The beautiful thing is the collaborative power which we now have with these scalable solutions can really help us focus on that one critical success factor in any environment, and that is trust in the data. Dave Wells, what do you think?
Right on target, Eric. The whole thing is trust in the data and collaboration among people working with data, whether you're a data analyst, a data curator, a data steward, security and risk person. Everybody has an interest in data from different perspectives, And the data catalog is sort of like traffic control central for all of these various interests that is so essential in making this complex data world work today.
That's just fantastic stuff. And final words from you, Andy?
Thanks for this. Some great questions coming in the Q&A. I just wanted to give an update that we will answer those questions in blog form, and in the follow-up that you receive from this webinar today, you'll be able to review the questions and the answers from us. But thanks for putting this on.
That is absolutely fantastic. Great job on the research, Dave Wells. Really fun stuff. I mean, you, of course, have brought this thorough methodology to your work once again. And great presentation by Unify, folks. We do archive all these webcasts for later viewing. It should be up shortly, as a matter of fact. I'll try to get it up as soon as WebEx spins that out, and we hope to hear from you again soon. You can always email yours truly, info@insideanalysis.com. But this is a great inaugural episode of Inside Report. We'll talk to you next time, folks. Take care. Bye-bye.